I think you guys don't have sex during the week, right?
Yeah, we don't, which I think freaks people out, but yeah.
Yeah, what's the whole science behind that?
Science, there is none. Here's my business philosophy. Monday through Friday, if I'm awake, I'm either working or working out. So that's just how we've structured our lives. And then on the weekend, my wife is my number one priority.
But what is your vision for Impact Theory? Is it another billion-dollar company, or is it the next trillion-dollar company? What's your dream for that?
And so when I look at the impact that I'm trying to have on the world, just very specifically to make sure that nobody gets to the age of 15 without encountering a growth mindset.
Is that kind of like a 10-minute rule? Like when you wake up and you kind of roll in bed, if it's 10 minutes, you just get up and you start working? Is that kind of what you've been doing forever?
For me, laying in bed is like an alcoholic and drinking. I can't have just one drink. I can't leave it open-ended. So I had to put some amount of time. I could have done 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, but there's no point at which I feel like getting out of bed.
But first, how do you get your drive to get to that even higher level that I'm sure you want to go to versus the regular person?
Drive is all about desire. And all the things in my life that I don't have are because I don't want it badly enough. That's just the truth. And that's true for everybody.
Hey guys, welcome back to a Driven Channel, and I'm here for the second time. It's been a year, Tom, and I'm glad to have you. I don't know if you remember, but I told you that I really look up to you. You're like my idol. I remember you used to come and drive around here with the dream homes, and now I get to kind of drive around. I saw your house, like when you sent the address, and I kind of just wanted to drive by to kind of get a visual. And I was telling my wife, she was like, "Man, this is an incredible house." Now, a year later, like you've been having a Impact Theory. You've co-founded it with your wife, and it's going on 5 years now. And I know that's your thing right now. Is that your main business right now? And is that what you're focused on 100%?
Yeah, entirely.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me back, by the way. It's wonderful to see you. I cannot believe it's been a year. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you driving around dreaming about houses, you're doing it in a much nicer car than I was doing it, let me tell you. So, but it's exciting. Thank you, man, so much for the kind words about it. For sure.
Yeah. Well, Tom, let's jump right into it because I had you the first time, and I want to know, like, with Impact Theory, I know you're very passionate about it. Like, I love your studio, your beautiful home. What's your? I know you look. I don't know if you look up to. You could correct me if I'm wrong. To Walt Disney. To Disney, it's the Disney in a way. But what is your vision for Impact Theory? Is it another billion-dollar company, or is it the next trillion-dollar company? What's your dream for that?
Well, so it's interesting. I don't think about it around revenue, specifically to Walt Disney. If he were alive, that would be a lot of fun. He's a worthy opponent.
Yeah.
And the Disney Corporation is a very worthy opponent. What they've done is really breathtaking. We use them as a guidepost because they're a very unique media company in that they only tell one kind of story from 1,000 different angles. And this was more true, say 20 or 30 years ago when their focus was really tight.
Yeah.
But they only tell one kind of story. And by doing that, they've really had massive influence on culture. And many people will credit Disney with giving birth to what we now call Americana. That sense of nostalgia that there was a simpler time that, we should all hearken back to. Main Street America, know your neighbor, good always wins, that kind of thing. And it's really astonishing how much they've embedded themselves into culture. And so when I look at the impact that I'm trying to have on the world, just very specifically to make sure that nobody gets to the age of 15 without encountering a growth mindset. And whether they adopt it or not, maybe that's the next stage of my evolution. But just making sure that they encounter it. And so I knew I was going to need to be influencing culture, which you really have only a handful of options. One would be music, video games, TV, film. I love music, but my gifts don't lie there.
Yeah.
And so putting a lot of time and energy trying to get good there, I don't think it'd be a good use of my time. But film and TV is my first passion, and gaming is something that I'm obsessed with as well. So that was the impetus of, okay, to have the societal change that I want to have, it's going to be through film, TV, and games. Who's done it right? Disney. And so they become North Star. But beyond that, we have a relatively our thesis differs. So they do what's called 4-quadrant storytelling. So they're trying to tell stories to the whole family. We take a very different approach where I'm saying you're a 11 to 15-year-old boy, I want to make something for you. You're an 11 to 15-year-old girl, I want to make something for you. And I'm not trying to make something for everybody. So we'll see if it works or not.
Yeah, you mentioned 15-year-old and mindset. Obviously, you have probably the strongest mindset that I've seen. You know, like you're 45, right?
Yes.
You're a young dude that's killing it. And I noticed that you're jumping from thing to thing to thing. Like you work really hard. I mean, you know it better than me. But how do you feel about being 45 and being here where you are? You wanted to be rich and you wanted abs. You got that. So what? How does it feel to? I mean, you have the biggest house here in Hollywood Hills. You have the abs, and now you're rich. Like how does it feel to do that at a young age?
Money is a really interesting thing. So what I hope everybody will hear in my answer is money's amazing. It's probably better than people think, but it's not what they've been told. What they think is it will make them feel some kind of way about themselves, which it will not. No matter how big of a house you buy, you'll always want a bigger one. No matter how much money you make, you'll always want more money, because the human animal is such that, left to its own devices, it's just trying to explore and basically come to control its environment. So we have an evolutionary push at our back to go for more, because from an evolutionary standpoint, it's a winning strategy. Now you get into an emotional conflict because the pursuit of things will never make you feel better.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself is the only thing that matters. So if you said, Tom, there are two worlds before you, one in which you have Jeff Bezos wealth, you can literally, build rockets and go to Mars, but you're deeply unfulfilled.
Yeah.
Or on this side, you're really struggling day to day to make ends meet, but you have so much meaning and purpose in your life that the fight really feels worth it to the core of your being, and you feel like you matter every day. And you're proud of the things that you're pursuing and how hard you're working and all that. I'll take that every day. And I've lived both. So I'm making that choice with my eyes wide open. People will joke sometimes about me when I make comments saying, well, you've never been poor. Yes, I have, motherfucker. I have not been able to pay all my bills. I've been on unemployment. I've, struggled at times in my life profoundly. But the thing that really matters is my mindset, my frame of reference. I ended up being able to get it useful very early. And so when I compare people that get stuck in cycles of poverty, that's a very different equation. So being rich young is great, feels wonderful. It allows me to do things that I want to do. But the real takeaway from my story is what I've had to do to my mind to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
Because the neurochemistry of fulfillment is the punchline of life.
What would you say is your biggest difference between the Tom today versus the Tom that did his first exit with Quest? Do you work harder? Do you work smarter? Like, is there something that's different?
I certainly try to work smarter every day to be more efficient. So I exited Quest a little less than 5 years ago. So certainly there have been improvements in efficiencies and things like that. I learned a lot of lessons at Quest, what to do, what not to do. And so I deploy those against my current company. But the real sort of mind, blowing, if I may, change was, me from my early 20s until now. That's startling. Because Quest was already a championship performance. So I'd already become capable of doing that, understanding business, working with other people, knowing how to construct deals and market and build products and all of that. So that's more just like you're eking out sort of those last bits of efficiency with business. But learning what business is at its sort of fundamental nature, that's life-changing.
You joke around in the past. I've heard you about an island that you could have retired, bought an island. We actually have a mutual friend that's close to doing that. But you didn't do. You decided to not buy the island, and then you decided to jump on another project, which was impact theory. What one thing about impact theory that I love is that I don't think there's another channel that makes it so easy to understand and to teach people like about business. You bring along a lot of because I'm big on business. Like that's I'm super inspired to learn more about business. We run a couple companies too, so I watch a lot of your interviews with other entrepreneurs that started businesses, and a lot of them have a similar story. Is one of your main targets maybe millennials, entrepreneurs, or are you targeting a mass variety of people?
You have to be careful not to try to be all things to all people, but I actually don't think this breaks down along age lines. I think it breaks down more along the lines of growth mindset or fixed mindset. If you have a fixed mindset, you're not going to enjoy my content, because the sort of core thesis is that ultimately your life is a reflection of the choices you've made, including what skills to get. And if you want to change your circumstances, you need only change your skill set.
Yeah.
So if you're open to that, whether you're young, it just so happens that young people tend to be more open. Life has beat them down less. They've learned less sort of bad lessons that, need to be unwound. So we probably skew a little bit young for that reason. And we're social media based. So that's going to skew us a little bit young as well. But I'll take everybody. I had a guy, 52-year-old guy, stop me in the middle of a Vegas hallway and just started crying. He was like, I lost my wife and my business in the same year, and you were the only thing that got me through. And so it's like moments like that, you're like, whoa, this is incredible. Somebody who is even older than I am, being able to draw something from the ideas. And that's why I think that there's broad appeal. I'm really trying to deal only with first principles.
Yeah.
So it's not like stuff I'm making up or thinking up on my own. My life has been about uncovering the brain works in a certain way. And so once you understand that the brain works in a certain way, and we're all trying to sell to people that have the same kind of brain, we're all trying to add meaning and purpose to a life that is run by that brain via other people that have that brain, you begin to realize, okay, there's just a ton amount of sort of common things here. And so getting down to that layer of commonality, whether it's what's common between businesses, whether it's what's common between people, it gets a lot easier to be broad.
Yeah. I'm really excited about you being part of Driven event. And is mindset kind of what you want to focus on? Is mindset everything?
I'll give in terms of what? Business?
Business, yeah. It's a business. It's kind of like
I wish it were the only thing. It isn't the only thing, but so I never intended to talk about mindset. I only ever thought I would talk about business. Okay. And so when I first stepped in front of the camera, it was with an eye towards, okay, I'm going to, be the business guy. Mm-hmm. And very quickly I realized, okay, wait a second. An entrepreneur would be asking me a question. Yeah. And I would realize, okay, wait, for you to implement the fix in your business, you first have to start thinking of something differently, whatever problem they were facing. And so I just kept coming back to the mindset of like, to think like an entrepreneur. And so you have to get your mindset right before you can actually deploy the practices in a business. And I'll give you an example. So the market is always quote unquote right in that you're either making enough money to pay your employees or you're not. And there's just no arguing with that. And so either you're selling something that the market values enough that they'll pay you more than it costs you to make it, and thusly you have enough money to pay your employees, and thusly you are in business, or you're not making something that people want more than it costs you to make it, and you're not making enough money and you can't pay your employees. So it's like, those are binary. So it's really simple. Now, if you are still in that early phase of building your mindset where your ego is built around being smart, being right, being worthy, being talented, all of the things that most people slide into by accident when they're young, then you're going to get beaten up because you don't want to know how you're wrong, because it damages your very sense of self. And the market is just going to beat you about the head, neck, and chest. So that's where it's like, oh shit. Like I first have to get them to understand you can't build your mindset around being right, because you're just the reality of how fast the market moves and how difficult business is. You're going to be wrong a lot. And unless you can use the failures as information, as guidance towards, what you need to learn in order to make that next step and progress in business, then you're going to fail. And so I kept having to come back to it. So in a business context, I go with wherever the people bringing me on to speak want me to go. So I can go hardcore business tactics, in which case it's I'll stand up in front of the audience with a microphone and nowhere to hide. This is one of my favorite things in the universe to do. So people can see the shit I teach is real. That ask me your hardest business question and we'll solve it together in real time. And that's where you see people's light bulbs going off of just, oh, okay, there's first principles thinking to be done in business, which is the only way to solve novel problems, is to be able to stop dealing in analogy, boil this down to how does your product work? How do your consumers work? How does the marketplace work? And can you find that through line that allows you to deliver a product that people are willing to pay for? So that's very easy. Or if you're like, hey, all these guys, they just need a boost in terms of how they think about the world themselves, how to gain skills, we can go that way.
Yeah. Now, Tom, is entrepreneurship, do you think that's for everybody? Let me give you an example. Like for me, growing up, I was never the smartest kid. I was in ESL class and they put me on special ed. I know your SAT wasn't the highest either. And so I relate a lot to that. Like I was the underdog all the time and nobody gave me a chance. But I think my mindset carried me through. So when you're not the smartest one, like how did you go from like, what do you think was the number one factor that enabled you to do what you did with Quest, and then now right after Quest, you just jump into another company? Like what's the main thing that maybe somebody watching this outside, they're not getting good grades in school right now, and they're kind of a little bit, like, should I stay in school, go to college, or should I become an entrepreneur? Like what is your take on that?
Okay, so first of all, entrepreneurship doesn't fit everyone's temperament. So not everybody is going to enjoy having all the stress riding on you. That can be a really difficult thing. So that I would say people need to decide whether that's just a path that they're interested in or not. Now, if it is, I believe it's a question of skill acquisition. So I didn't have business instincts when I started. So unfortunately, I don't have a story where I look really cool and people want to be me. My whole story is just like, work really hard, be willing to look really stupid for long periods of time, but constantly learning. And so the thing from a mindset perspective that allowed me to get where I am today was a willingness to fail publicly.
Yeah.
And because I was willing to fail publicly, I was constantly learning, because I would try something, which was the point at which I wasn't afraid to fail. I would try it. Some would work, some wouldn't, some would kind of work and kind of fail. Others would be just absolutely disastrous failures, but I was never afraid to look stupid. So, okay, cool. So now I'm learning. So for maybe 5 or 10 years, I looked like a moron because it was constantly in over my head. It didn't look to the outside world like I was getting anywhere. I still wasn't making a lot of money, but I knew, whoa, I'm getting better every day, every day, every day, every day. And there's going to be what we'll call a threshold event. There'll be a moment where all the things that I know come together, and now it flips over and I can actually begin monetizing this in a real way. And so that ended up being Quest as a company. It's a very long story that I'm sure people have heard me talk about before, about how I go through that process. And I get to the point where I realize, okay, what matters is adding value to people's lives, not selling something for a lot of money. And that in adding value to people's lives, I ended up making myself wealthy. But it's sort of this surprise that I didn't actually see coming. I had just become so frustrated at trying to get rich that I realized meaning, purpose, and value creation were things that I could do even if I were failing. And so if I could build a life that I loved, even in failure, then something wonderful might happen, but it might not. But I could still be loving my life as I, more or less toiled away.
Yeah.
And that willingness to look stupid, the fiendish pursuit of knowledge, and not worrying about what other people think, not worrying about looking cool, just entirely, I just want to get better every day. And then the other side is skill set. And you just have to be relentlessly focused on getting good at something that moves the needle in your business. And so every entrepreneur needs to ask one question: what is my secret sauce? What is the thing that I'm prepared to pursue? Because you may never get there, but to pursue becoming the best in the world at.
Yeah.
And then can you monetize that? And so a lot of entrepreneurs don't really know what their thing is. Now it might be leadership, might be decision making, it might be coding, it might be art. But you need to know what is the one thing that your company is going to rely on you to do that other companies would gladly pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars to do because you're that good at it. But instead of doing it for them, you're going to essentially trade it for equity in your own company.
Now, skill set, you mentioned it quite a few times right now. Is skill set something that anybody can get better, like can develop, or is like, do you still get mentored by someone, or how do you keep getting better every day? Because you obviously have become better and better and better. So what are you doing now, and can anybody like watching us get to your level by maybe reading, studying? What is it that you recommend, or
Right, so
what is it that you do?
I'll answer that in two steps. So first part of that is, can anybody do it? We'd have to define what it is. So for now, let's define it as improve. So yes, every human being can improve, and they can improve so dramatically that they would 100x basically every element of their life. There's a great quote that sums this idea up, which is, you can't make a racehorse out of a pig, but you can make a really fast pig.
Yeah.
And so my life is the answer to the question, what does a really fast pig look like? So I don't have, like I said, I don't have particular skills in business or anything like that. Everything that I know, I've had to learn it the hard way. It took me a very long time, but I've 100x my life, and in so many areas. And so you see the result of that. And the result is, from where I started, it's staggering. So it's very exciting. Anybody can 100x themselves. Now, we're all different. So we all start with different material. Science seems to indicate that we're about 50% hardwired, meaning there's nothing you can do to change it, and then 50% malleable. And so by focusing on the 50% of you that's malleable, you can 100x your life. But in what direction you go, so they might struggle. So for instance, it's not a surprise to me that one of the areas that I've leveraged to be successful is social media, for two reasons. One, I'm wired for community. I love to do things as a part of a team. I love to see other people succeed. And then two, I'm highly verbal. So I knew if I got in front of a camera and put time and energy there, which I've been doing since I was 12, putting energy into being able to speak in public. So I've spent, if 10,000 hours is mastery, I've probably spent 40,000 hours over the course of my life focused on being able to communicate ideas verbally, from in 7th grade, finding, love for theater, to being on speech and debate all through high school, to wanting to be a stand-up comic and having done stand-up comedy, to running a business and having to lead, and, having a company with 3,000 employees. You're constantly articulating ideas. So that's been my particular path. But at the end of the day, it's really just about, what do your goals demand in terms of skills that you get good at? Which of those are you going to acquire for yourself? And which of those are you going to partner with somebody that already has those skills or gets what I call a disproportionate return?
Yeah.
So I get a disproportionate return on my time if I focus on something that has to do with verbal ability. I'm just wired for it.
Yeah. Now, Tom, you're a beast. So like where do you get your drive to just becoming even a bigger beast? And then on the second part is like, how does regular Joe or Freddie, how do they get their drive? Because it's a different kind of drive. Like I want to learn your drive, right? But there's some people that might be maybe starting a business for the first time, and it's tough in the beginning. But first, how do you get your drive to get to that even higher level that I'm sure you want to go to versus the regular person?
Okay, so drive is all about desire. And all the things in my life that I don't have are because I don't want it badly enough. That's just the truth. And that's true for everybody. The key to understand is that desire is a process. So you do things repeatedly that build that desire within you. So my drive, I've always had ambition, but I didn't always have drive. And my drive really started when I proposed to my now wife. This was 20 years ago now. We've been married for a little over 19 years. I was going to get to that, but so go for it. I proposed to her, and first I asked for her dad's blessing to marry her, and he said no. And I was like, whoa, okay, so that stings. And he said, how do you plan to take care of my daughter? Because at the time I was very broke. I did not show any signs of promise. And I said to him, look, I know you see a broke, undereducated kid, but one day I'm going to make your daughter a wealthy woman. And he was like, sure. And I remember walking away from that with deep unease because I believed it, but yet every day I would lay in bed every morning for 4 to 5 hours, just laying in bed, watching music videos. And I thought, oh, this doesn't comport with me saying that I'm going to make her a wealthy woman. Like laying in bed is not the behavior of somebody who's trying to make their dreams come true. And so I had all this shame around that. And I started to think of my then fiance as a witness to my crimes. And so now every time I laid in bed, it didn't just matter to me, it impacted her life. And I started to feel really badly about myself. And I knew that if I were going to make good on these promises, that I had to start setting rules in my life. I wouldn't have called it drive back then. I hadn't sort of made that make sense.
Yeah.
But I knew I couldn't lay in bed for 4 and 5 hours a day every day while my fiance went to work and I stayed at home with no job. So I made this simple rule that I use to this day, which is in 10 minutes or less, from the time I know I'm awake, in 10 minutes or less, I get out of bed. And so I put that in place, and that one simple rule has had a massive impact on my life. And I just started getting up and going to work. And so it starts small. And in the beginning, it felt like really painful. And then you discover identity and you realize that I can say to somebody, hey, I'm the kind of person that within my code of ethics, I will do whatever it takes to make my dreams come true. And that makes me feel powerful to say it. But it only makes me feel powerful to say it because I know it's actually true. And that over the last, call it 20 years at this point, I've just done it day after day after day after day. I work 93 hours a week and have for years. And that is a sustainable pace for me. I could do that forever. I could do that, until I'm 95. And that comes from identity, getting excited about who you want to be and then living in accordance with that. And then desire is a process and saying, I want this thing, whatever that is, whether it's to build the next Disney or to end metabolic disease, which is what we were trying to do at Quest. And there's a great quote by this guy named Nietzsche. And he said, a man with a strong enough why can endure almost any how. And there's another author by the name of Viktor Frankl who survived Auschwitz. And that was his punchline as well, that he knew why he was suffering. And so when you have a why and you want to make that thing come true, for me, my why is to make sure that nobody makes it to the age of 15 without encountering a growth mindset. I have a whole host of personal reasons why that matters to me, but to build that desire around it, I obsess about it. I tell myself, I tell other people, I go on podcasts like this, I state it again. And I embody the passion that I wanted to feel in the beginning. And then over enough time, 3 months, 6 months of getting hyped up, telling people what you're about, suddenly, as you even think about it, you feel that same sense of like, yo, I got this. And so the desire just slowly ratchets up as you do these mechanistic things to reinforce in your own mind, I want this thing. And then when you want it badly enough, then your behaviors line up.
Now, Tom, before we get into your wife, because we're really excited about her new book that we heard, me and my wife, but we're gonna ask you about that. But the 10-minute, you said 10 minutes. Is that kind of like a 10-minute rule? Like when you wake up and you kind of roll in bed, if it's 10 minutes, you just get up and you start working? Is that kind of what you've been doing forever?
100%, yeah. So I've had that since I was like 24, 25.
Why not roll in bed for 20 more minutes?
Because I learned that I don't have the ability. It's for me, laying in bed is like an alcoholic and drinking. I can't have just one drink. I can't leave it open-ended. So I had to put some amount of time. I could have done 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, but there's no point at which I feel like getting out of bed, basically ever. For whatever reason, for me, the neurochemistry of that, the want to stay in bed, sleepy chemicals, they just linger forever. But if I get out of bed and get moving, they dissipate very quickly. And because I only pursue things that I'm excited about and are honorable, then it's like easy to get out of bed, right? I'm not getting out of bed to go do something I hate. I'm getting out of bed to go do something I love. You need to be very thoughtful about the life you construct for yourself. So 10 minutes, yep, that's perfect. It's enough time to be like, oh my God, I'm so tired. But then be like, all right, you had your 10 minutes and now it's time to get out of bed. And so I'm super religious. If I miss it, at a minimum, I'll confess it to my wife and be like, 11 minutes today. Because there have been a few times where I'm like trying to milk that 10-minute, but by the time my feet actually hit the floor, it's clicked over into the 11th minute. And that to me is a loss. I failed that day. So I'm super rigid about it.
So like if you get up, you have to use the restroom, pee, you just have to get up.
Yeah. So there's a whole routine that I do around making sure I don't need to get up to pee.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I do have one minor caveat, which is that only applies if I've slept for at least 6 hours. So if I wake up in the middle of the night and I've had 3 hours of sleep, then I have ways now that I'll fall back asleep very, very quickly. But even if I didn't know how to do that, and I didn't used to, I would lay in bed for 2 hours, right? Just trying to fall back asleep, trying to meditate, trying to breathe, trying to whatever to get back to sleep, because I know that you have to optimize your cognition.
You know what? One time I woke a day in advance because I have similar thing, like a 10-minute rule. I don't like rolling in bed for 40 minutes because I think it's a waste of time. And then when I wake up, I just have all these ideas, about for my business, for this, for that. And I get excited. So I get up, but it's not the smartest thing to do because then you crash early. But one time I woke up and I had the Fitbit and it showed, after I did my morning routine, wash my face, all that stuff, I noticed, wait a minute, it's 12:20. So what time did I wake up? And I look at it and it's 11:40 p.m. So I woke up a day in advance. Obviously, that day I was like drained. So I went to sleep like at 8, but I still woke up the same day and I just wanted to get to work. I was so excited. And I should have slept a little bit more. But you mind sharing that secret on how to go back to sleep when you have these big ideas? Because I think that's what you wake up and you're excited because you have so much to create, and that happens to me. I don't know if it's the same for you.
It does. Other times it's stress. I've just got so many things that I'm thinking through, so many projects that we're trying to push forward. So not like stress, I'm freaking out, just like, oh man, I have to remember that. Oh, we really need to push this forward. So I mean, to call it excitement would be a lie. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. So what I've learned is I have a rule in my life that when I go to bed, my only job is to sleep. So I don't think about work. Now, if I have an idea or something I'm worried that it'll be in the back of my mind, I'll quickly write it down and then go back to sleep. But so one, just reminding myself, my only job right now is to sleep. I'm very religious about my sleep hygiene. So not being exposed to blue light for several hours before I go to bed. I stop eating something like 7 or 8 hours before I go to bed. So my last meal is at 1:15 p.m. And then I get into bed, the room is cool, like all that stuff, right? To really optimize for that. But my secret, because I wake up a lot in the middle of the night and it's a fucking nightmare. And when I can't fall back to sleep, it becomes really inefficient. And I'm a freak for efficiency because either I toss and turn thinking of all the ideas, finally get out of bed, and then I'm groggy. So I'm not thinking well the entire next day. Or I just don't get enough sleep, or even just having a huge gap in my sleep means that I'm going to be suboptimal cognitively for the rest of the day. So I was like, I have to crack this nut. So almost by accident, one day I heard somebody say years ago that reading a book puts you in a different brainwave pattern than the problem solving that business keeps you in. So I thought, okay, 30 minutes before I go to bed, it's all narrative. So I'll put on an audio book. And so I put on the book. And then if I wake up in the middle of the night, I keep 2 sets of AirPods next to my bed. And let's say usually the time that I wake up the first time is somewhere between 12:30 and 1:30 a.m. So then I put the earbuds in and I turn the volume down right to the point where I can only hear it if I put a tiny bit of pressure on my ear. So I put a tiny bit of pressure on my ear and I can hear it and I can make out what they're saying and I pay attention. And then all of a sudden I'm waking up. Because your brain goes back into that like narrative mode. You're not trying to problem solve anymore. Someone's talking, so you're not thinking about other things. You're really just right there in that. But as you fall asleep, you relax and you take the pressure off your ear. So now it's still there. You can't quite follow what they're saying, so that if they'd start talking louder or whatever, you don't notice. And then I just sleep. It is as close to a silver bullet for me as you're ever going to get.
We're going to do that. I'm going to get my wife some AirPods. Is impact theory, does it qualify for that? Put it in the night?
I wouldn't. No. Because that's going to put you in a problem solving mode. It's going to be something, I want to take a note on that. So I would do something that's pure narrative.
Okay. Now speaking of power couples, like your wife, Lisa, you guys are the definition of power couples. If you look it up in the dictionary, like both of you are inspiring the world. I know she's coming up with a new book. Is that something you could give us a few?
I don't know what she's announced yet. So no, but she'll be talking, I think, pretty publicly soon. It's very exciting. It is something that I think she's uniquely qualified to talk about. I think people are going to absolutely love it. I'm not even sure that she's released the title yet, so I don't want to scoop her.
Okay.
But yeah, I am way stoked
Yeah.
for this book. It's going to be amazing.
How important has it been to you? Because my wife, she was with me when I was homeless, and we used to sleep in the car. And then we opened up our first. I don't know if you remember last podcast. She came in the end, and she said hi to you. But she's been there. She's been there when I was like, I thought I was balling because I had a S-Class Mercedes and I was 21. And it was when the mortgage industry was good in 2007.
Oh yeah.
But I lost everything, so we became homeless, and we used to just park our car in good neighborhoods like this and sleep, which wasn't that horrible like it sounds, but we were kind of homeless, but with a car, Ford Explorer. So she's been there from the beginning, then the struggle, then now, and opening 1, 2, 3, 4, and more companies. So has been, I think, one of my key ingredients, because she pushes me when I get down. And then I push her when she gets down, and then she gets stressed out, and she deals with a lot of she deals with all the managing and operations.
Is she good at operations?
She's really good. She's the best.
Growing hypothesis about this. So my wife is the same.
She's operations. I'm like sales and drive and the ideas.
I have no idea if this just happens to be the random anecdotes of people that I know, but I wouldn't be surprised if we find that partnership, when people can do it well, when they have enough sort of interpersonal abilities, they can navigate that when you, because they say that the magic combo in business is the dreamer, the visionary, and then the person who can execute. And I've seen so many couples where the division is that way, where the guy is the more visionary, but has a harder time doing all the operational stuff. And then the woman, for whatever reason, is just killing it at the operational level. So again, it could just be the random 12 people I know or whatever that do that, and it happens to break along those lines. But I'm a huge believer that there is a difference in the way that the male and female brains operate, and that we're sort of nudged in either directions. We obviously have way more overlap than we have differences, but that those slight nudges in different directions create these really fascinating outcomes. And so for Lisa and I to figure that out, that, hey, you're really good at seeing problems, at understanding the operational necessities of putting systems together in place. And then I'm way better at vision, risk taking, like, building the vision of where we want to go and how we're going to get there and all of that. So it's been phenomenal once we understood, okay, we have these two different roles. And once we stepped into the roles, then working together became very easy.
How did you guys discover that you were good at one thing and she was good at the operations? What did you guys kind of clash in the beginning, and you were like, you do this, you do that? Or was it just clear that she was really good at that and you were really good at that? I'll give you an example. Like I could sell at an event, or I could recruit a bunch of agents to our companies, but then I don't know what to do next. So like she's really good at keeping everybody together, dealing with people, organizing, managing, planning. Like I can't plan at all. Like I'm horrible at that. I'll go out of business if I just and I don't think I could find another person like that that's really good in operations. But it's vice versa. Like she won't have anybody to organize or plan anything if it weren't for me. So I know what I'm really good at, and I know what I suck at. She knows what she gets mad because she kind of gets stressed out. But for you, like, did you guys kind of clash in the beginning and then you figured it out, or how was that process?
We did, but our clashing started a long time ago. So she worked for me briefly at the very beginning of our relationship, where I was helping to run a film school, and she was one of the TAs at the school. And so we had already sort of flirted with that. But in the beginning, I thought I needed to be better than her at everything. And otherwise, I didn't think she would find me attractive. And so that was a real important lesson for me in the beginning, was there are things that she is better at, and you should celebrate that rather than be made insecure by it. So we processed through some of that stuff long before we got to working together as partners. So by the time we came to have a partnership, we had 20 years almost to like figure out like who's good at what, and who has credibility in a certain area, and that we actually like to celebrate the other person for the things that they're good at. So yeah, by the time we came together at Impact Theory, which is the first time we were equal partners, before it was back at Quest, it was the three three of us that founded the company, and then our wives were hyper involved, parts of the founding team. So Lisa was there as a part of that founding team. But it was a different dynamic. She had a department that reported into me, whereas now at Impact Theory, we are 50-50, not even 51-49 partners, 50-50 partners. And we just happen to split the business based on what we're good at, which again, we've figured out, over decades together.
Yeah, I have so many things to ask you, Tom, but we're running out of time. But I want to keep it close. A few more things. I heard somewhere you said, you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but
I'm so curious now. Ask away.
But sex, I
love it the most.
You don't. I think you guys don't have sex during the week, right?
Yeah, we don't, which I think freaks people out. But yeah.
Yeah, what's the whole science behind that?
Science, there is none. Here's my business philosophy. So I have rules. I thrive on rules. And so Monday through Friday, if I'm awake, I'm either working or working out. So that's just how we've structured our lives. And then on the weekend, my wife is my number one priority. Now, this wouldn't work if we weren't partners in the business. So I'm seeing her constantly. We're engaging in very meaningful ways all throughout the week. It's just not sexual. And then on the weekends, then it's, it's husband and wife, it's intimacy, it's connection, it's, all those fun things. Now, would I have done this in my 20s? No. Would I have been able to get away with it in my early 30s? Probably not. But your neurochemistry begins to shift. And as I came into my 40s, it was no, I was completely cool with look, during the week, I'm in one mode and I'm hardcore there and we're building this together. And what we're trying to achieve is massive. And so I don't think people need to do that by any means. Like I said, it's easy for me to have rules, and I won't say that I've never broken my rule. If there's something out of the ordinary that's happening, by all means. But yeah, call it 85% of the time, that's true.
Yeah. Cause we have little girls, so they sleep in our bed and it's kind of hard. But
I would imagine.
Yeah. But do you guys, isn't it kind of hard sometimes when you're sleeping together and you guys
to
have
not
no
have
kids?
sex?
Yeah.
No, I work until the moment I go to bed. So by the time I get into bed, I'm so fucking tired. The last thing on my mind is sex.
Yeah.
So now it's the first thing on my mind when I wake up on a Saturday. Yeah. So it's that's a almost Pavlovian thing now, where I've so trained myself that weekends are for that. You're really letting loose on a lot of the rules that I have. If on the weekend, if I want to lay in bed, I'll lay in bed. I'm so trained at this point not to, that I don't, but all bets are off. My diet is a little bit different on the weekend. On Saturdays, I have, sugar and things, which I do not allow myself the rest of the week. And then, so that is one. It's, again, like I said, I would have had trouble with that in my 20s or 30s, but in my 40s, honestly, I don't. Just not thinking like that. And then on the weekends, I can drink as deeply from that trough as I would like. Yeah. So, I'm A-okay for the rest of the week. And then I'm so focused on that. I just don't have a problem shifting into that gear and then being in that gear. And then if something special is going on and, we want to, and we're both excited about it, we would. So it's just that, like I said, 85% of the time we don't.
So during Monday through Friday, you're working pretty much the whole day.
Literally from the moment I wake up.
And then Saturday and Sunday, do you have 6 hours that you work on Saturdays?
Yeah, I work probably 6 to 8 hours on the weekends. Lisa and I wake up at very different times. So I start working as soon as I wake up, and then she draws. She's an artist, a world-class artist. She's unbelievable. And so she'll spend several hours doing that. And then I just keep working through that time. And then we stop at the same time. And then the rest of the day is husband and wife time.
Are you the early person, or is she the early person?
Way earlier.
What time do you wake up?
Could be anywhere from 4 a.m. to 6 on the weekend if we went to bed later.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And weekdays, it's earlier than that?
Weekdays, I wake up whenever I wake up, so I don't set an alarm. So it could be anywhere from 4 a.m. Be very unusual for me to sleep much after 5 a.m. Does happen sometimes for whatever reason. But
yeah, she's the same. She's like the later person that wakes up. Now, what do you and Lisa do for fun on the weekends? Do you guys have any bad habits?
Well, would I call them bad habits? The only sort of bad habit we have is I will have some ice cream on a Saturday if I feel like it. So probably once or twice a month, we'll go all the way to ice cream. Other than that, I have carbs, which I don't normally have, but we don't really have bad habits. We only drink a few times a year. So Yeah, on the weekend, really, it's that I'm more flexible on my diet on a Saturday specifically than I would be normally. But I don't consider this a bad habit at all. But one thing that will surprise some people is that my wife, my sister, and I play a video game together called Destiny 2. And so we'll spend a couple of hours a day playing that, which is absolutely freakishly enjoyable. But other than that, it's, the intimate relations between a husband and a wife.
Yeah.
It's watching shows, playing video games, having some good food. Those are pretty much our weekends. And we try to get sun exposure, which here in Southern California, you can do like 8 or 9 months out of the year. So we'll enjoy the sun, make sure we get our vitamin D levels topped up. And that's our weekends. It's, we've built sort of this ideal life for ourselves so that even when we go on vacation, sometimes we're kind of happy to get back to the highly optimized routine.
Now, Tom, going to where you are today, you and Lisa, you mentioned sometimes you wake up and it's not only ideas, but sometimes it's stress. Do you I can't imagine somebody like you and Lisa having any stress.
In our relationship, you mean?
Well, in general, maybe I'm being too focused on the material things, like on the house, the money, and all that stuff. Do you still get stressed out? Maybe you don't anymore. That was in the past, but
I have an obscene tolerance for stress. So I won't say that I don't get stressed, because I definitely do, but it comes very, very late in a heavy workload for me. I think Lisa does get stressed a little bit faster than I do, but she addresses it by not working as many hours as I work. And for both of us, sustainability is all that matters. Like, build a life that you want to do every day for the rest of your life. Like, we're in a financial situation where everything that we do out of choice. We never have to work again.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really make sense. It's just that when you're pursuing meaning and purpose, and you're prepared to be a big dreamer and to execute against those big things, you often get to the point where there's just a lot going on, and you'll end up getting 3 or 4 things that break all at the same time. And there's meaningful consequences to not solving them. So you have to solve them. And so, there's going to be moments where stress accumulates. The question is, do you know how to deal with it? So on a physiological level, I'm extraordinarily good at dealing with stress. So not only do I have a high threshold, but I also sleep well. I meditate, I do things, I exercise, I do things to manage that stress level.
Maybe one of those things is that you're super healthy, because I think like even ice cream, like that's not that bad. Like compared to me, like I'll have the whole weekend, I'll pig out and have mimosas and beers and things like that. So you only have ice cream. Were you kind of worse? Did you splurge more earlier when you were younger, or did it stop
but
at a
always
certain
with
age?
food. So I didn't have my first drink of alcohol until I was 26, and my wife was the corrupting influence.
Yeah.
And alcohol is really fun. It makes me feel like I'm suppressing the urge to dance on a table, which is a great feeling. But I'm just too aware of the long-term negative consequences. And I'm so fiendish about keeping my brain sharp for as long as humanly possible. So just for my own sake of how I want to feel, I don't drink a lot. And so I've never been a hard liver. Like I never did drugs, I've smoked weed a few times, but like, I don't find that particularly appealing, except for if anybody has had sex on marijuana.
Yeah, it's good.
Holy hell. It's a different sport in my opinion. So that is fun occasionally, but like, again, going back to the, being really thoughtful about the long-term management of the organ that is my brain. I try to be really, really thoughtful about that. So the short answer is I used to eat a lot more bad food than I do now, but food has always been sort of the only thing that I've punished myself with.
And I know you switched your diet, right? Like or your wife Lisa. Like I think because I saw you veggies, then it was like meat, and is that kind of something that you feel people have to do as they go up in age, where what was good at your 20s is maybe not what your body's going to take at your 30s and 40s? Does that change for
I
everybody?
don't think it changes. What does change is you can get away with a lot when you're young.
Okay,
You just
okay.
don't notice that it's doing damage.
Yeah.
Then as you get older, that damage has been accruing. And then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, my knees hurt, or my stomach gets upset really easy, or whatever. It was always having that problem. You just hadn't had all the insults of life, whether it's, multiple rounds of antibiotics in the case of my wife that just decimated her microbiome. So things that happen to correlate with being young. You just haven't had all the insults. You haven't been sick as many times. You haven't had as many antibiotics. You haven't been stressed out. You haven't this, that, or the other. And then, of course, just the body begins to do things less efficiently as you get older. So you notice this stuff more. So I don't want people to fool themselves. They're like, oh, I can do all this stuff. What do you mean? Like, this isn't the problem for me. No, it's that you're young and you may be also just better at dealing with the damage that's accruing. That's also possible. But what's good for old people is good for young people and vice versa. And sort of the easy way to think of it is whole food only, avoid sugar basically whenever possible.
Yeah.
And only drink water if you can bear it, or plain black coffee if you can't. And the only reason I throw coffee in there is because we've been drinking it for thousands of years as a species and seem to be doing okay. Anything other than those.
So energy drinks are not really good.
Dude, I really think they're a problem. And I'm saying that as somebody, I could not love a 0-calorie Monster anymore if I tried.
Yeah.
I love them so much, but I read a bunch of studies that were like, these things can disrupt your microbiome. They just kept saying that. And I thought, they don't upset my stomach, so I don't see what the problem is. So at one point I was drinking 3 full-size Monsters per day, plus 1 to 2 cans of Diet Coke. And I was an anxious mess. If anybody's ever heard me talk about, there was a moment in my life where I had debilitating anxiety. It was that period. And it just never clicked that the drinks were a big part of it. What's that?
That's me with Celsius right now. Celsius,
really?
The energy drink, yeah.
So interesting.
You don't have to talk about Celsius because
I just don't know.
But it's like a 0-calorie, 0 sugar energy drink. And I have one, then I have another one, and it's but I because today I was gonna have one before coming here, but then I kind of get jittery, and I don't want to be like that. But I mean, black coffee just doesn't taste that good.
So here's what I do: I mix it with sparkling water. So I cut it way down, so that it is admittedly an acquired taste. I don't think anybody's gonna drink it and be like, oh my God, this is delicious.
Yeah.
But as a variation on water. And then also just by cutting it down, I intake a lot less caffeine. So I don't like the idea of being addicted to anything. So caffeine is nice. It's a great neurostimulant. And so I'll take more of it if I really need to focus or I want to stay up late or whatever. Who knows?
Yeah.
There are times. But for the most part, I do it just to have a little bit of flavor, a little bit of caffeine. So I drink about a third of an espresso shot over the course of a day to a day and a half. All mixed with sparkling water.
Got it. So one last thing to close it out, Tom, about entrepreneurship business. What's the main difference between net worth, like on paper, and then cash in the bank?
It's funny. So people just don't understand money. So you see the Forbes list, right? And it's like, oh my God, this person's worth $170 billion. They don't have $170 billion in their bank account. They would have to sell, almost always, it's company shares that they own. They'd have to sell those shares to realize those gains. And by the way, if they tried to sell that many shares all at once, the price would plummet. So it's a bit of a misnomer to say like, oh my God, Elon Musk, his net worth went up, $30 billion over the course of the pandemic. The value of his shares went up $30 billion over the course of the pandemic. It's very different than having the money in the bank. Now, that's very powerful and you can liquidate it and get as wealthy as you can on paper. It's amazing. But you need to understand the difference between paper money and cash in the bank money, because one can be spent and one can't be spent. One can drop to virtually nothing overnight and the other, for the most part, can't. Now, fiat currency has a whole thing and inflation is real and, we won't get into that. But so when you think about somebody's net worth, knowing how much they have in the bank is far more telling. Liquid assets, let's say, is far more telling than what they have in illiquid assets, which is what most people talk about because it's usually a bigger number.
Like with Quest, you were net worth rich, right? Now wealthy. Now you're cash wealthy.
Right.
Is,
So it was,
which one do you like better?
access to capital for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Liquid net worth. So the funny thing was at Quest was I was at one point worth probably a couple $100 million, and I had a Ford Focus with a leaky exhaust,
Wow.
only one car between my wife and I was bumming rides off my employees. So it was hilarious to think I'm so rich on paper, but my real life is that I can't afford to go out. I can't afford a second car. So yeah, that's what people need to understand. And the reason that I care about them understanding it is people get really salty about, these billionaires and how much money they make and all that, because they think that they are sitting on that money in their account and they're not spending it. And so it's money that they have and nobody else does. They don't realize that it's just promised value of what somebody might be willing to pay for this other thing that they own. And for them to realize that money, they would have to sell it to someone else who wants to buy it.
Yeah.
So it's a really, and then my hope is that once they realize that, they go, oh, well, then I can go get some of those assets that hopefully will accrue in value as well. And once you get people thinking about ownership, you change their life.
Thank you, Tom. So I want to leave more for the event, so you could talk about more things and share that. But well, one last thing in a minute. Equity. Do you believe in, or now that you have impact theory, do you believe in equity to your people?
Yeah. So every full-time employee at Impact Theory has ownership and profit sharing.
Interesting.
But here's the important thing to understand about this. The only thing I'm interested in incentivizing is long-term employment. So those shares revert immediately back to the company if you quit or get fired for any reason whatsoever.
Got it.
So I am not doing this like a Silicon Valley startup, because that model only works because you plan to sell the company. I don't plan to sell the company. I want people retiring at Impact Theory. So I want them to reap the rewards. If the company grows and their energies and efforts are helping it get bigger, I want them to get wealthy with me. But I don't want them to be here for 5 years, lock in that equity, and then leave. It's just, to me, it is the most absurd system ever.
Got it. So thank you so much, Tom. I want to respect your time. Where can people follow you? What's your favorite?
Tom Bilyeu. If you're interested in NFTs and crypto, go to Twitter. If you're interested in mindset, go to Instagram. And if you want the interview shows, go to YouTube. But everywhere, it's at Tom Bilyeu.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for having me.